So Lage Lund's been a big influence on me over the past few years in terms of coming up with a more integrated approach to playing the guitar. By which I mean sort of playing stuff which is less like, you know, here's a solo line, here's some chords. But rather kind of moving more towards an approach where lines and chords are just sort of reflections of each other, if that makes any sense. A more pianistic way to play the guitar. Anyway, Sharp 11 recently put out a transcription.
Love the taste of whipped cream. Spread it on the top of me.
So I thought I'd have a look into that, and there are a few techniques. Although like Lage Lund's playing sounds incredibly abstract and sophisticated, actually some of the stuff he does is based on really, really simple principles. Okay, so I wanted to talk about some of those today. So the first one I wanted to talk about is this use of augmented triads. This ties into a wider thing that Lage tends to do, where he tends to put like two triads together to make a more sophisticated composite sound. But if we look at this runny as at the start of the piece, it starts with a very conventional minor major 7th arpeggio, something like this, which is like something you could expect Django or Charlie Christian to play. But then he plays this, and then, okay, so this here, that's an enclosure around an augmented triad. Augmented triad, it's basically that, right? Which you could think of as being, however is most convenient to you, either a B augmented, or maybe, if you're looking at it from the point of view of the third of the chord, a E flat augmented chord. And if you wind from one chord to the other, so from a C minor to a B augmented, you'd certainly get that kind of sound world. And then he does something very similar for the G minor major 7th. So he plays this straight minor triad, augmented, this time it's F sharp augmented, and then again it's like the rest of it's triads. It's kind of a G triad followed by a C triad, right? So as a general rule, if you plonk augmented triad a half step below the minor chord, it sounds really good. And from a scale perspective, of course, you can say that's melodic minor or whatever you fancy, but that's not, you know, I don't think that's quite the way he's thinking. Lage has actually said, I've heard him say several times, that he doesn't really think in scales. So I think it's better to think about it in terms of chordal substitutions. In that way, he's actually quite a traditional jazz guitarist. He plays a lot of shapes and a lot of chord subs. There's very sophisticated ones. So what is this doing in any case? Well, I mean, this bit here is actually the first part of the tune piece, which is a minor 2-5-1 into G minor. So this C minor major 7th arpeggio, or C triad with the augmented, is actually subbing for the A minor 7 flat 5, which it does really well. Chord scale people will go, oh yeah, it's the A Lydian sharp 2, whatever, but we don't really care. We're just sort of sewing in a minor chord for an A minor 7 flat 5, which I have covered in numerous videos. It does something very nice afterwards, which I want to touch on, which kind of moves on to his use of shells. So shell voicings are things with the root, the third and 7th. Lage uses these a lot. Either root 3rd 7th, root 7th 3rd, sorry, root 6th 3rd, or root 3rd 6th sometimes. So he plays this ascending major 7th arpeggio. And he follows up with that chord. It's really nice. In this case, we're thinking about B major 7th. This is the B major 7th arpeggio. arpeggio with an extra passing tone, which is happens to be the 6th in the middle there. And there you go. So there, it's a D sharp minor 7 shell with this open B string on top, which gives us the kind of an add flat 6. But these chords, minor add flat 6, minor 7 add flat 6, always sounds like a first inversion major 7 add 9 to me, or a major, major 7 add 9 I think in this case. But an inversion. A lovely voicing. Of course it only works for a B major 7th because you need the open string. But I suppose you could also make it work on this, so it'd be this, wouldn't it? You can make it work for a this happens to be one that'll work for an E major chord. And you could probably do it on this one as well. This would be G major. That's a bit muddier down there. So you can see how I can take these principles and adapt them. I don't have to necessarily play verbatim what Lage plays. And come up with my own stuff based on that idea. By the way, one thing that Lage does in general is he plays the melody first and the chord afterwards, which is a very simple trick that always works a chord melody. Sorry about the noise, I've got my window open, I'd die if not. So you have to deal with it. Okay, so for instance if I'm playing... It's just that I'm always putting very, very simple chords here. It's just this thing with the melody, but I always put the melody first. There's a very it's a very good habit to get into. So that's how, just using very simple chords, that's how I would arrange that melody. And Lage follows this principle by and large throughout the piece, even though he's kind of, doing it in a much more abstract way. Something that's really, really nice in Lage's playing generally is the way he'll take very simple things and then break them up. So a nice example of that, a really nice example, is this thing here. So A flat altered chord going into D flat major 7th, or D flat major. And what we actually get is this. Okay, so this is this is actually a grip. It's not the kind of grip that's very easy to play because it's got a lot of notes. It's basically this thing. There we go. It kind of is a D7 sharp 9 with a 5th on top and a 5th on bottom. So it's patterned out. So, I mean that's a pretty hip sounding chord I think already. That's basically that, and then moving to that D flat open triad shape, which I use all the time for like rhythm guitar. It's funny how much of Lage's stuff seems to be based on these kind of rhythm guitar voicings. So that, I mean, it sounds nice on its own, but then this is really nice. You're breaking up 2 strings at a time, 6th, 7th, another 7th, and then 6th. So it kind of creates a really kind of strident, kind of very kind of like a little bit dissonant, which is great. As you can see, I'm just like that's the G and E string together, B and D, G and A, D and E string. Very cool, huh? And then to make that resolution into D flat, all you have to do is move down by half step. and then put the D on top there. So yeah, you say you zoom. Now you can use this technique on practically anything. And one thing that Lage likes to demonstrate is we take just going up the scale in 7th chords, for instance, and we can go. I've seen him do this at master classes. So notes-wise, it's actually really simple, but I do have to think about fingering a little bit to make it clear. You can take it for any tune. You can change voice as well. So okay, and then maybe this. Okay, so things like that are just like. Oh, I'm not playing anything unusual there, it's just stuff like this. You know, it's really standard drop 2 grips and things like that. And yet it sounds very, well, Lage Lundish when he starts to do that. Lage says he got that from Jimmy Weibel, by the way, who he also studied with. There's something else that he does to enliven things a little bit, which is really nice. If we go back to this thing, isn't that nice? So that's really just just moving those up and down by half steps. Those 2 bottom notes, and you can do this for triads. One thing that you can do this for 6th chords as well. One thing that Lage does, which reminds me a lot of the Barry Harris exercises I used to study. This would be I suppose it's a lower neighbour tone on the middle note. He does that a lot as well. Sort of really, I think it was an F7 flat 9 type thing. So this going into B flat major. So this is lovely. So it goes and then does that. So there's a few instances where this happens. This is obviously a sound that Lage likes a lot. So Lage uses a lot of what we might think of as harmonically wrong notes to create a bit of tension and edge. I don't even know if I would necessarily think of these theoretically. So for instance, we've got a D7 chord. It's near the start of the thing, and he plays like G, F sharp, D, E flat, and then C sharp on top. So it sounds like this. Weird, huh? This is over D7. So this one's fine. This is the enclosure of the 3rd. This is roots flat 9, but then a major 7th on top. So the chord kind of ends up being like a sort of, I mean, normally it would be a what, D7 flat 9, but instead we get a D major 7 flat 9, which I think resolves rather interestingly into the G minor major 7th. In fact, he doesn't resolve that C sharp at all. He just kind of keeps it there. And then just goes to... and then just goes straight to the G minor. So it's kind of... I just think of that as dry Scandi wit in musical form. I don't really think there's a theoretical explanation for it. There's another bit later on where he does something lovely. It's just like a bit of like moment of what's going on? What a joker. Right, so this is B flat 6, swing grip, with a wonderful flat third or sharp 9 on top. So you can think of this as being, I mean, if you're going to be nerdy about it, you can think of this as being a major 7 sharp 9 sound, which is a chord that, you know, well, she's got a major 6th in it, isn't it? So it's not even that, but this is just an extended, to me, an extended lower neighbour tone. So you can try that in your 2-5-1s. That's a little bit more tame, but you know, it's a basic idea, which is something I think like jazz musicians sort of shy away from dissonance. I mean, not Lage Lund, obviously, but that little sort of injection of, I mean, it is the blues, right? It's not that strange. You know, it creates a sense of tension and even humour in the music, and I really enjoy that. Anyway, that's all I've got time for today. That's a load of information. I hope you find it useful and inspiring for your own ideas. Do check out, I mean, there's loads more stuff in this solo, but hopefully what you appreciate is that actually a lot of the sort of materials and devices he uses are not that strange or complicated. They are things that you can apply to your playing right away, like breaking up chords in a different way, or, you know, incorporating dissonance over the top, or finding ways to add notes to shells, you know, or using, you know, interleaved triad arpeggios, like for instance the minor and the augmented that he uses at the start of the solo. But if I was to go all the way through the video and talk about everything he uses, we'd be here for several hours, and while some people might watch that, I have to do other things like eat.